Welcome to this week's Power Rankings. I don't like to get political, but I got myself a political shirt for the American election. This arrived today. The interesting thing is, so I ordered this online. This is the back of the shirt. The front has nothing on it. What's the point? So Cthulhu 2020, the greater of two evils. I also follow the Cthulhu for President page on Twitter because it's fun to follow on Twitter. So there you go. Yvonne's going to change the neckline so that the back becomes the front because I wanted to say Cthulhu 2020 on the front, not the back. It's weird. I don't know why you do that. So I just thought that would be fun to throw in at the start of this video. Thank you guys so much as well for now this channel is over 15,000 subscribers and for understanding that in the New York Jets video, the important thing is the fact that the team is on the way to 0-16. It doesn't matter that I wrote Detroit and not Denver. And after the video went live, I went, right, the Denver game I remember because it was the Saturday night game and it was just sort of there. And of course, you know, Darnold instead of Darno, because the catcher for the Braves, of course, Darno, and I had Braves on. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But again, that wasn't the important thing from that. What was important from that video is that the New York Jets, who have lost to Miami 24-0 this week. Next week, they're at home against Buffalo. They're firmly implanted at number 32. They are firmly planted at number 32. As last year, Miami was there most of the year. So I saw comments too, like Miami wasn't the worst team. They were. I did power rankings last year, and Miami was firmly planted at 32 because they were intending to get the number 1 draft pick. So, yeah, the Jets are 32, and I don't see any change in sight. Now, for the Giants, who were 31 last week, well, they won this week. Who did they defeat? Well, they defeated Washington. Now, for Washington, this week coming up, they're at home against Dallas, but they are 31st on the board. So that division, it's a rough division, isn't it? The NFC East is a pretty rough division, and for Washington, and they don't have technically a logo. I will replace this when they get a new logo because they don't have a name. It's just I've thought about just writing the letter W on the board. Maybe I'll start doing that next week. I'll just write a W on the board. So when I'm changing the power rankings board around, I'll just have to erase the W and move the. It's just they're a disaster too. But as long as the Jets are in the league, then it's not that bad. It can always be worse because Jets, right? So the team that defeated them by 1 point this week is now going to Philadelphia next week. So for the Giants, they have a chance to move up from 30th, and who knows? Maybe the Giants win this division. It could happen. It absolutely could happen. And so for the Giants, they're up at 30th after they defeated Washington by 1 point. And again, they're going to Philadelphia this week, so we'll see. And we'll see early, because that's the Thursday game, right? Is the Jets and the Eagles, or the Giants and the Eagles, I should say. And then at 29, so the Giants are at 30, and at 29, I have Jacksonville. Now, Jacksonville this week, they lost against Detroit, 34-16. Yes, it was Detroit, because Denver was playing New England. Now, for Jacksonville, this coming week, they go and they play the Chargers in LA. That could be a very interesting game. Because for the Chargers, they're trying to show that they're competitive this year. And for Jacksonville, it's an ongoing storyline of Jacksonville just not being very good. And it's still happening. So, yeah. At 28, these guys lost 40-23 this week. I believe they have next week off, which might be best for fans of the Vikings. How the mighty have fallen. The Vikings, it feels like it wasn't that long ago. The Vikings were a pretty good team. And now they lost to Atlanta. 40-23. Which means maybe Atlanta's better than their record has shown so far. But it definitely causes Minnesota to take quite the fall in the standings. Now, 27th, these guys lost 42-36 in overtime. The offense is there. The defense is not. It looks like they're at home against Green Bay this coming week, and that's Houston. So if you're a Texans fan and you're like, well, it can't get much worse, Green Bay's coming to town, and Green Bay's going to be choked at how this week went. So, yeah, it could. It could. It's Aaron Rodgers, and we've already seen that Houston just can't defend. There isn't any. What was it? 600 yards they allowed against Tennessee. And I know Tennessee's one of the better teams in football, but you've got to get a stop somewhere. You have to. And so for Houston, it just hasn't been happening. And anybody up to this point in this row, it's a better luck next year. Number 26, they won this week. They're at home against Detroit next week. Yes, it's Detroit, and that's Atlanta. So for the Falcons, they get a win this week. They move up. I've said it before. I like the Falcons' overall makeup, but it just doesn't translate on the field. It doesn't translate to wins. And so for right now, they're 1-5. The odds of them running the table are almost nil. But they're at home against Detroit, so they could potentially go to 2-5 if they can get that win over Detroit, right? Number 25, they had a lead this week, to which I said, well, I wonder how they're going to blow this one. And then, sure enough, they did. And that was against Indianapolis. Indianapolis is playing well, and I love Phillip Rivers, but honestly, the Bengals need to close that door. They've got to get a win for Burrow, and they've got to stop getting him killed as well. I've talked about this before, that it's a horrible protection scheme they've got going for their quarterback. He was sacked 22 times the first 5 weeks. So yeah, Cincinnati's back in the bottom row. They may not get out of it this time. They may just stay in the bottom row, but yeah, I like their future as long as they can protect that quarterback of theirs. At 24th, and they lost big. They lost 38-10. Next week they're going to Washington, and that's Dallas. Now, for Dallas, I didn't drop them much further because of the teams that are below them. Now, without Dak Prescott, clearly it's going to affect how many points they put up, and that lackluster effort. But again, does Dallas win the division? I really don't know who's going to win the division because it's the NFC East. So for Dallas, they take a little bit of a drop. I think they dropped 1 spot this week. But again, it's the teams beneath them I don't put ahead of them at this stage. Number 23, coming off of a win in Jacksonville. Now they're going to Atlanta. If the Lions are going to start making hay, and if they're going to start getting into the conversation for wild card, they need to win this one this coming week. They're against Atlanta. They're a team that's beneath them on the board. They proved against Jacksonville they could defeat a team beneath them on the board, which bumped them past a couple of teams. But Detroit needs to show it in back-to-back weeks. Last year, as I said, Detroit was the team with a lot of heartbreaking losses. Maybe this year they have some massive comeback. We'll see, right? Number 22, coming off of a win this week. And for next week, they are at home against Kansas City. So, Denver got off to a rough start. And Denver was supposed to be better than what they are. And maybe this is the start of a turnaround. Beating the New England Patriots, even if the New England Patriots weren't 100%. Cam Newton was in the game, but how 100% was he? But again, I don't want to take anything away from Denver, so I'm not going to. So they move up out of the bottom row this week. And next week against the Kansas City Chiefs, they can show, hey, we're in this. So this is the big prove-it week for the Denver Broncos. This is the one where we find out just how for real they are. Number 21, they lost this week. They lost 30-28. And they're home against the Giants next week, and that's the Eagles. Now, the reason why the Eagles don't take a hit with that loss is that's 30-28 against Baltimore. Baltimore Ravens a very good team, and the Eagles showed they could at least get within 2 points of them. So I'm giving the Eagles a little bit of a benefit of the doubt in that one, and so they stay at 21. I debated about dropping them down to 22, but I thought, no, I'll leave them at 21 for now, and then we'll see this coming week against the Giants. If they fall back and if they lose against the Giants, then the division just stays wide open, doesn't it? It really does. Number 20, and they won this week. Now, next week, let me take a look. No, they're not playing. They have the bye week this week, and that's Miami. Now, they whooped the Jets. So that's your caveat right there. That's your asterisk. They whooped the Jets. But I'm not going to bump Miami down when they win a game. And I know it's the Jets. But Miami's 3-3. So could we see a team go 8-8 this year in Miami after what happened last year? I think it'd be nice for Miami fans to see that happen, but they've still got the rest of the schedule ahead of them. There's still 12 games left. We'll see where they end up at that. If they end up 9-7, I would think that'd be a huge win for Miami. Number 19, and on the didn't play this week list, but they're playing at home against Jacksonville next week, and that is the Chargers. At some point, Herbert's got to get a win, right? At some point, and they don't play a Hall of Fame quarterback this week against Jacksonville. So is this the week? Because honestly, you look at some of the quarterbacks he's been up against, and you look at some of the teams he's been up against, and I feel bad for the kid. I do. So both teams I cheer for have kid quarterbacks, and they're both learning the hard way. Yeah, things are kind of rough right now. And so the Chargers, I could see them dropping as low as, say, 22nd or 23rd this week. If they can't pull out the win, and if enough teams behind them do well, I could see the Chargers down as low as 23rd. And it would drag Jacksonville up a couple spots, too. So we'll see. Number 18. And I'm going to go ahead and say this is the lowest that they've ever been in a power rankings that I've done. They lost against Cleveland. They lost against Denver this week. And now next week, they're at home against San Francisco, and that is the New England Patriots. I am surprised the New England Patriots are that low. Bill Belichick, the battle of Belichick versus Brady, if you want to see it that way, so far, Brady's kind of in the lead. And we'll see whether or not New England can turn it around this week. Again, they're at home against San Francisco. That should be a good challenge because San Francisco moved up to 17th with the win over the Rams. So they beat the Rams 24-16, and now they're going to be playing the New England Patriots. And you get the feeling maybe this is where things start to turn around for San Francisco. I know, injuries and holdouts and all that being what they are, but San Francisco is still a pretty good team, and they're a well-coached team. So I can't see them falling that far that quickly. So they're 17th this week. I do anticipate them being in the top two rows next week. Now at number 16... I have a team that lost this week 23-16, and next week they're in New Orleans, and that's Carolina. So if the Panthers are gonna prove themselves, this is the week to do it. They have to play New Orleans and show, hey, we're still in this. We're not falling off the map. But New Orleans is going to be a tough test. New Orleans coming off of their bye week, and again, for anybody wondering with these games, this is the schedule right now. We'll see what kind of positive tests come out and how these games end up actually being played out. But yeah, I have Carolina at 16th, and I'm okay with that. I had thought about dropping them below San Francisco, but nah. I give Chicago more credit than that. Number 15 is Indianapolis. And I went back and forth on where to put them. Indianapolis, they beat Cincinnati, but they had to come back from a huge deficit against Cincinnati. And if it was any other team but Cincinnati's defense, things probably turn out a little bit differently. So 31-27 was your final. I think with Indianapolis, we're going to get a much better feeling for where they're at this week. They are... Actually, no, they're off this week. I thought I had Indianapolis playing this week. See? Indianapolis is off this week. But to their benefit, the Rams are the next step ahead of them. The Rams lost against San Francisco. For the LA Rams, they're at home against Chicago. So if Chicago beats the Rams would drop down below Indianapolis. Spoiler alert. But for the Rams, again, maybe the West isn't as strong as it was last year. Or San Francisco beating the Rams might prove that these three teams are all still pretty close. We'll get a better idea when the Seahawks get into the conversation too. But the Rams take a bit of a drop this week. At 13, moving up with their 38-10 win over Dallas, are the Cardinals. So the Cardinals are here, and they're at home against Seattle this week. So Cardinals fans who might take issue with my power rankings, don't worry. The Cardinals, if they beat the Seahawks, will take a large jump in the overall power rankings next week. It's a good test for them, and we'll see how that goes. The Rams below the Cardinals is already interesting enough, but if the Cardinals can go in and beat Seattle, That could make the whole division really interesting, right? Number 12, and they didn't play this week, right? Nope, they didn't play this week. But next week they're home against Tampa, and that's the Raiders. The Raiders, respectable. Respectable so far in the season, and if they can win against Tampa, I would say, you know what? Maybe they're better than respectable. Maybe they're pretty darn good. And I find myself cautiously optimistic about the Raiders, which is as close to optimistic as this guy usually gets. But we'll see. We'll see whether or not the Raiders can get it done this week against Tampa Bay, who may be getting into the groove with that win they put up this week. Number 11, with their win this week over Carolina, and next week they are in LA against the Rams, and that's the Bears. The Bears, respectable, good record, and we'll see what kind of staying power they have. If they can beat the Rams, they'll move into the top 10 next week, because not all top 10 teams are going to win their games. And I have the Rams at 11. And interestingly enough, at 10, coming out of their bye week, and maybe I have them too low. Maybe I have the Saints too low. It's possible. We'll see when they play against Carolina. If I have them too low, that's going to show up pretty quickly into that game. Carolina's a good test. Top half of the board test for New Orleans and for Drew Brees. And we'll see how that works out for New Orleans this week, right? Number 9, dropping out of the top row. And you might have expected a huge drop for Cleveland. Here's the deal. Cleveland lays an egg. They lose 38-7 against Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's that good. I think Pittsburgh is that good. And I think Cleveland was due for a stinker. So I'm willing to say, you know what? They'll drop out of the top row, but I'm not going to drop them that far. Because I understand they're the Browns and they're favored to fall off, but I'll give them a bit of a benefit of the doubt in this one. So this coming week, that will change if they fail to beat Cincinnati. If Cincinnati defeats Cleveland, then we're in a period of, so it looks like Cleveland's falling apart again. But right now, no. I don't see that. And again, I know the game against Pittsburgh was terrible, but it's one game. It's one game. Number 8, so these guys are still in the top row. They lost 26-17 against Kansas City this week. Next week, they are in New York against the Bills. So the test for the Bills is simple. They have to go in, beat the Jets, and it can't be in any kind of, there can't be any tension in that game. They need to go in, they need to beat the Jets, they need to get their confidence back after what was a tough loss for them this week. And again, it feels like that's sort of the Bills' storyline, right? The Bills, they build themselves up, they look pretty good, and then there's some kind of speed bump that hits during the regular season, and then if they have a playoff game, they tend to lose that game. They want a different narrative this year. So winning against the Jets and making sure it's not a game that has a lot of tension in it, that's key. Number 7, with a huge win this week over Green Bay, and next week going into Vegas, is the Bucs. And honestly, the Bucs might belong higher. I know last week's power rankings, there were complaints that the Bucs were too high at 3-2. Bucs are very good. And Brady can still play. And this was a team that last year had everything together, just not the quarterback position. Yeah, now they do. So this is a Tampa Bay team that could absolutely win a Super Bowl. And this is while we're seeing the Rays in the World Series. Number 6, they didn't play this week. Next week they are at home, or no, they're in Arizona, and that's the Seahawks. So Seattle at 6, and we'll get a good idea of where they're at this week in against a Cardinals team that has been good enough to be in the top half of the power rankings board. So I like Seattle, I still do. I like Russell Wilson. We'll see how things go for them this week. Number 5, with the overtime victory over Houston, 42-26, and looking like they're, a team that can run other teams over. This week, they're at home against Pittsburgh. Your game of the week is the Tennessee Titans against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Titans are excellent offensively, but how bad was Houston, right? And then they also allowed 36 points against Houston, so do they have a defensive issue? A lot of question marks right now, but what isn't in question is their record. Their record is fantastic, so the Titans end up in the top 5 as a result of that. Number 4, and they take a drop this week. Next week, they're in Houston, so we'll get a good idea with Green Bay. whether or not this is just a 1-week thing. But that loss against Tampa, that hurt. And because there's 3 other teams in the league that I think are fantastic, I had to drop Green Bay down to 4th. And we'll see this coming week just how good they can be against Houston, a team that they should be able to defeat with relative ease, and yet they are a team that put up 36 against Tennessee. So a lot of interesting aspects to this. At number 3, after defeating Cleveland 38-7, now they're going into Tennessee, and that is the Steelers. Pittsburgh, honestly, this is an amazingly fun start to the season if you're a Steelers fan. The best start they've had since 1978. So, yeah, that's a pretty good start to the season. And so the Steelers find themselves at number 3. And I'm trying to remember if last year in the power rankings, if I had them as high as 3. I don't remember. It's possible I did. But, yeah, they're legit top 3 right now for me in the league. At number 2, after beating Buffalo 26-17, and now they're going to Denver, and that's Kansas City. So they have the one blemish on their record, a loss on their record, but they bounced back pretty well. They beat a pretty good team in Buffalo, so I pushed them back up to number 2. So see, it's a fair power ranking system, and Kansas City still one of the favorites. Defending Super Bowl champions usually are a favorite at this time of the year anyways. So at number 1, after a win over Philadelphia, this coming week, do they have the week off? It looks like they do. Looks like Baltimore probably stays in first next week. And the reason being, Baltimore's been really solid throughout the year. If Kansas City wins over Denver, it would depend on the strength of that win. The Steelers, however, if they went in and they laid a drubbing on Tennessee, Pittsburgh could find themselves in first place after that as well. So it depends on how the game goes. But, yeah, for Baltimore, who beat Philadelphia this week, they didn't win by a ton, but still, Baltimore has an excellent record, and so I have them at number 1 on the power rankings board. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And again, thank you guys so much for helping this channel reach 15,000 subscribers. And as this channel grows, you get more content. That's kind of the way that works. I do post majority of the content on the hockey channel, but if things ever started to even out, then the content posted on the channels would even out as well. That's always been the dream. Thank you guys so much for all your support, and hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.